Only one of those days.
DJ here. And then, of course, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves. Again, this is our second inaugural Career Day, and again, our focus is to have the professionals tell you a little bit about what they do and give you guys some great advice. Look forward to having a great day with you. Please ask questions, because, of course, it's a lot more engaging that way. So I think what we're going to do for the next hour is have this wonderful panel here really discuss the areas that we have laid out on our agenda. And I guess, Beth, in terms of sound, so we have some online folks, and we got a nice speaker here, and we're trying an iPad 2 for the first time to see how it works, and so far so good. And then, Beth, I guess my only question would be on this side, how good the audio is. So I guess as long as we're fine there, but we'll take it as we go. So I guess what I'd like to do is have the panel just introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about generally what you do, and then what we'll do for the rest of the questions is to open up as a general discussion for the panel. Okay, so maybe we could start with our fearless leader in advocacy statewide, Carol Walters. Carol, you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit what you do?
Yes. Before I introduce myself, I would like to share with you a quote I just read yesterday from one of my favorite people in the entire world, Jamie LaRue. You may not know that name, but Jamie LaRue came to us last fall and did this incredible presentation on libraries. He was interviewed in 2008 by a sly reporter from the Rocky Mountain Times who said, "What are you going to do now since the internet is taking over? You're not going to have a job." Well, in 2011, the Rocky Mountain Times, after 150 years, closed its door, and Jamie LaRue and his group of librarians all over Colorado are still going full blast. So if you're here today worried about, am I wasting my money coming to UNCG, I have a news flash for you. We may be different. We may wear a different hat, but we're going to be around 150 years from now. My name is Carol Walters, and I'm a public librarian.
I'm director of the Teaching Resources Center here in the School of Education at UNCG, and I'm a former school librarian and classroom teacher before that. So my job here is similar and different from that of a school librarian. Similar in that the TRC is a model school library, so we have children's books and resources for teachers and future teachers. So the facility itself is very much like a school library. Of course, the clientele, the customer base that I deal with now is a little bit different. But I was a school librarian for 12 years and a teacher in elementary school before that for 7 years. I was a librarian in middle and high school. So we'll talk a little bit more, I guess, about the specifics of our jobs. But I will say that being in a small library, whether it's a school library or a small public library or a special library, when you're the only librarian, you do a little bit of everything. You do all of it just on a smaller scale. So it is a very different atmosphere, different environment than being in a larger place. So you do your collection development, some of your cataloging, you do the managing the collection, and then also dealing with the customers, whether they be teachers, students, college students, school-age students. It's really, a lot of the same kinds of things in each place. So it's just the difference, I think, between being in a larger library versus a smaller is more significant than even the type of library.
My name is Kate McLeod, and as they say at my institution, I have the longest title, which is Associate Dean for Library and Information Services and Associate Professor of Law, which essentially means I'm the director and I supervise IT for the Elon Law School campus here in Greensboro, North Carolina. What do I do? Pretty much, other than I will not touch an OCLC record if I can at all. You name it, and at times since I've been at Elon, I've done it, including in the jeans moving the book still. So we select, we do about, I tend to teach between 3 and 7 credits a semester, as well as directing the library. So it's kind of a really specialized field, which is open for people, and we are very accepting. And I see that we are predominantly female in this group. At the moment, we are 60% female directors in the ABA accredited law schools in this country. So it is much less of a glass ceiling institution than others if you're interested in that. However, we're going to make you get another degree. To become public services, you must have a JD degree. And if anybody is interested, I know several institutions where if you go get yourself a job as a cataloger, they'll put you through your law school for free.
I'm Mary Crowder. I'm the head of the reference department here at UNCG. I've been an academic librarian for a long, long time. I've been here about 5 years, and previously at the University of Kentucky, where I did a lot of different things. I was a branch librarian. I was something, kind of a weird title, Director of Interdisciplinary Information Literacy. I was head of a reference team. So I've done a lot of things. I've had a lot of experience with search committees and resume reviewing. I've done a lot of that over the years.
And hi, I'm Beth Filer-Williams, and I'm the coordinator of library services for distance learning at UNCG. And I work in the ERIT department, that's Electronic Resources and Information Technology. So I'm in the IT department of the library, not like the reference department, which is a little unusual. But it works out well because I work a lot with the tech side, the people that I'm working with. We have a big tech department at UNCG libraries, and they build a lot of stuff in-house. So it's kind of nice because I can work I work a lot with reference department with the people that Mary works with, but I can still, work with the IT people and sort of translate sometimes that needs to be done to explain to them what needs to happen and what can happen. So I do a lot of things as well as run the instructional tech team for the library. So we build a lot of tutorials and do a lot of e-learning, teach online, all those sorts of things. But besides that, I've been here about 3.5 years. Just to go back, if anyone's interested to talk to me about my past, the 14 years I've been in libraries, I graduated with my certification for school librarianship when I was a middle school librarian for a couple years. Then I worked at University of Colorado Boulder as a map and GIS librarian, and I ran the map library. So I did everything, including original cataloging of maps, preservation of maps, everything. And got in my jeans and filed maps, everything. And then I worked as a state consultant for 5 years, the Colorado Library Consortium, if you've heard of it. And so it's kind of a quasi-governmental organization that works a lot with the state library. But what we did was we ran a courier network around the state, which is something we don't have here in North Carolina. We kind of were like a Colorado consortium, the Carolina Consortium or NC Live or someone that offers databases at a discount so that, consortium prices for libraries to buy into. So we did those. I did online learning and ran conferences and did training for all types of libraries. And I served on the school library board, did a lot with power libraries and a lot of different things. And before that, I actually worked in a public library for 7 years during high school and college. So I've kind of done a little of them all. And I even worked twice, 2 different special libraries just as an intern too. So I just think there's so many great opportunities in libraries, and I can't figure out what I want to do when I grow up, so I just try different ones every couple of years. So there's a lot of great opportunities out there, and I've been in different places too, so I can answer any questions related to that.
I'm exhausted. I think most of you know who I am. I'm Nora Bird, and I'm here to represent my past, not so much my present. And that was as a science librarian for the first part of my career, and then as a small college librarian, including a very short stint as a director. Hated it, as I always say. And then I worked in a community college for my last job, and I liked that the best job because it was part of what Lori was talking about. I did a little bit of everything, including, never thought I would say this, but they actually let me touch OCLC and create records. So some of those really bad cataloging records out there are probably mine. So I can talk about any of those experiences, and then if any of you are, having some sort of nightmare about getting your PhD, you can talk to me about that too.
I'm Dennis Fry. I am currently the Director of Instructional Technology and Media for Rockingham County Schools. So I span K-12. It covers both media and information technology services and education. I've been there about 5 years. Prior to that, I was a library and media coordinator for Roanoke City Schools in Virginia. So an urban school district, rural school district. While there, I also served as a board member on the city library board and served as president of that board. Was a records officer for the district there. Served as a privacy council member for the state legislature. So we did some advisement on things like intellectual privacy and things like that for the legislature. And so I guess total I've been about 17 years working with school librarians. Lori and I at one time worked together, and glad to see you're here. I also did actually work in a teaching resources center as a graduate student at Radford University, so I'm familiar with that. They kind of latched on to me because of this new thing at the time, the internet, and how that was going to impact the media specialist school librarian environment. They needed somebody to come in and kind of try to make that transition, and Carol said it perfectly. And as a records officer, we did a lot of shredding of paper, and I'll never forget a gentleman showing up, a vendor, and he just smiled. I said, "We're buying more computers." He said, "We probably won't be printing much anymore." And I just wanted to see what he would do, and he smiled. He said, "The more you buy, the more paper you're going to produce." And that's really has become true. And also, with children's literature, I think, although we like freehand illustrations, but there are some very nice computer design elements now in children's literature. So I think technology has really expanded the access to reading for students, for reading for our little younger children, and the areas are blending. And as you will see, there are a lot of avenues. I mean, consulting privacy work for a state legislature. I mean, where are they going to go for that? I mean, they need an information specialist. Where are you going to be able to advise people how to protect themselves online? They need an information specialist. And whether you do something specific to librarians or whether you teach in a classroom, we need your expertise and this knowledge base, because people need to make intelligent decisions about what they do with data, what they do with information. And our students are not where they need to be when they graduate and having information skills. So we need your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so this is going to be an open-ended question. So I got an email recently from a concerned and helpful employer that told me essentially that she had been receiving some cover letters from our students, and they were not so good. And so clearly, I guess, getting down to the nitty-gritty here as far as looking for a job, describe the importance of cover letters and resumes for you, and more importantly, speak to the ones that really stand out in a favorable way, I guess. So as far as helpful advice to everyone here, what are the cover letters and resumes that really work for you that you might recommend some tricks of the trade? General question to the panel.
Put the right institution's name in the cover letter.
Really?
Do not send me a resume that I can't print or save, and don't put stupid colored bubbles all over the resume that is now very graphic when you look at it, but it can't be printed, can't be shared with your hiring committee. So essentially, don't make me do extra work, because, you know, the resume that I'm in the middle of a job search, not a librarian job search, instructional technologist job search. So I have just had 40 resumes and cover letters in the last week and a half. It is amazing. Sentences without verbs, wrong punctuation, failing to capitalize. As I said, I got 3 cover letters with the wrong institution. I understand UNCG is looking for somebody in instructional technology too. I had 3 of your resumes and cover letters sent to our HR department.
That's pretty high. but unfortunately, I'm not terrifically surprised. We've had the same sort of thing. It is absolutely imperative that you have everything correct. In a university setting, if you use incorrect grammar, misspell words, use T-H-E-I-R when you meant T-H-E-R-E, because your spell check didn't pick that up, you go to the bottom of the pile. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's a great website called opencoverletters.com, which is anonymous cover letters from hired librarians and archivists. So it's opencoverletters.com. You might want to check it out. Though you might want to don't cut and paste. We don't know plagiarism here. What you find, but it might give you some good ideas on ways to format cover letters. And these are ones of people that got jobs. So it's good to review.
For goodness sakes, have somebody proofread anything you send out. Yes. And somebody who's not afraid to hurt your feelings, preferably. And say, wow, this paragraph doesn't make any sense. You really need to rewrite it. Because you would rather have a friend or a partner or a spouse say that to you than an employer say that when they get the letter.
And how important is it? I just want to put giant exclamation point. If you do not write a decent cover letter, no one's going to read your resume. So do not pour all your energy into the resume. The resume is important. We're going to read it, but we're not going to get past that cover letter. Just like Mary just said, it goes in the I'm not going to read that pile immediately, because you've got 40, or you might have 100, and they might be being electronically screened. So, in other words, if that cover letter doesn't have keywords in it, it doesn't have the right institution, it doesn't have the right job, it doesn't say anything about instructional technology, even though you are applying for an instructional technology job. Yes, librarians can do instructional technology, but you have to make a case for that, and you need to say that in the cover letter that you're making that case. So cover letter, absolutely the most important thing. We will forgive some inaccuracies in, librarians are old English teachers, okay? And I wasn't trained in English, I was trained in sciences. For my entire bloody career, I have had English teachers changing my grammar. bosses who kind of say, "Oh, Nora, that needs a comma there," but they will really carefully read the cover letter, make allowances for the resume, because resumes have a different kind of structure, right? And you can have, short sentences that trail off, or no sentences, right? So that's my advice.
I agree with Nora. I'm in the midst of a committee job search right now, too, so I've been reading a lot this week. So kind of the pet peeves, same things, no funky fonts that won't print, or that are hard to read. I mean, I know that kind of goes without saying, but just, black and white, crisp, clear, easy to read. The resume or the packet, when I print them out, and I have 20, if most of them, and of course different jobs require, different things, and there'll be different links, but, for example, if most of them are 5 or 6 pages long and yours is 15 pages long, that's too long. Not because I don't want to read it or don't have time, but because it can come across as pretentious or too much fluff. The resume particularly, I want to see, first of all, education and work experience. I mean, those are going to be the two things. I mean, if you don't meet the qualifications for the job, that's probably going to be, where we're going to see it. I don't want to have to hunt for that. I want to see that right away, right there. The other stuff, are things, anybody can say, some of it. I mean, just be careful with, just those phrases that are just overused because, again, what does it mean? Anybody can say those things. The cover letter, however, is where you can elaborate on, why you're the right fit for this job. And that's what I want to see in the cover letter, that you are enthusiastic about this job. Not just that you want a job, but you want this job, and this is why. And that you're confident that you can do this job. So specifics about, have the requirements for the job right there with you as you're doing your resume and cover letter, so that you're making sure this is tailored to this specific job. Because these are the things that the people reading your resume and cover letter, this is what we're looking for, so we need to see it, in your cover letter and your resume easily. We don't want to necessarily have to hunt through and try to figure out for ourselves if you're the fit for this job. Tell me why you're the fit for this job.
We have right now a search going on, and I'm not on this committee for a diversity residency, but I was on the previous committee when we hired the last person. We got cover letters that did not refer in any way to diversity, what they had done related to diversity, what they thought about diversity. Absolutely nothing. We didn't even consider those.
I usually I look at, the job ad has what they want, and I usually cut and paste it into a letter and then build it around that, because you want to refer to and even find, key phrases that they use and give examples, because I know I've made mistakes in the past where you don't want to reiterate what's in your resume or your Vita in your letter, but like Laurie was saying and other people were saying, pull those things out. But make sure you speak to those key things they're looking for, because that's what I look when I scan down a cover letter, because I've been on a number of search committees. Are they meeting, are these things that we want, are they talking to those, or are they just saying, oh yeah, and I worked here at UNCG and I did this and I did that? No, I want to know specifically that you're pulling out those specific points. And then also, I usually have a Vita, so there's slight differences in resumes and Vitas, but being an academic, it's usually a Vita. And I've been putting mine on mine recently, because a lot of times with your Vita, you kind of, as you get more experience and you have more on there, you might not want to have it way too long, but you could have an e-portfolio that you could create, like I have, where you have all your information in there and it's organized so that people can then go to that if they wanted more information. And it helps if you've done things that you want to link to, because it's hard to put a link in a cover letter, especially if they're getting printed out, and sometimes they're hard to type. So that might be something else you want to think about, is having something online as your e-portfolio to show all your great skills.
One of the things that I can offer is when you're crafting your resume, everybody is going to be telling me what they have, or what positions they've held, or what doors they've gone through. It helps distinguish you if you tell me what you have accomplished in a specific way. So if you can put that in the format of some data, for example, not just that you served 3 years doing such and such, but specific to your job. Did you change something in the position that you previously held, or as an intern, or in your course of study? You were able to accomplish the following things. that tells me that, one, you're goal-oriented, you've been able to fulfill those goals, and I know exactly what goals you were able to meet within the context of what you were working. That tells me a whole lot. That tells me your drive. That tells me what you value, more than just saying, I was 3 years as an intern at such and such. Well, I'm going to get a lot of that. How do I distinguish you from them? I don't know what you did as an intern. Tell me, in detail, a description of what you were able to accomplish. Maybe as an intern, you went out and made a connection in the community that brought more people into a public library, for example. And you weren't asked to do that. That probably wasn't something, maybe, for example, if you're working for Carol, that she had you do. But you took that initiative, and it made a difference in that library. That tells me you've taken something and went in a different direction. I will easily be able to distinguish you, and I won't be able to forget it because you told me a story, a little snippet of a story. And you can these are bullet things. You can bullet them, but the accomplishments is really what we want to see.
I agree with that. There's one other thing. It's not on the cover letter, but the attachment of those people you call references. Make sure you have volunteered with, worked with, knew, your mother knew, your grandmother knew, somebody knew this person who knows you and knows something special about you that nobody else knows. I hired a gentleman 5 years ago that none of my board wanted to hire. They looked at his resume too, and they didn't want to hire him. I fortunately had 2 board members who were on my side, and we had to work around the other 6. And of course we won, and we hired him. And he's one of the best things that ever happened to us. You know why I hired him? Because of one of the references, because before I talk to people, if I get down to I'm going to interview 4 people, I go ahead and call references before I even bring them in. And the one professor he had worked for 2 or 3 years, because he went to school part-time, said, if he doesn't know how to do it, he'll figure it out. He's always done that. He is flexible, and he's smart, and don't let the interview, fool you, because he walked into the interview and he didn't have on a suit and tie, which a lot of the little old ladies in the room look, whatever. Well, so that's really important. You got to know what people are saying. You can't know fully, but if you have several good people on that reference thing, you don't want somebody that says, well, they're okay. They're a nice person. Well, everybody's nice. I want somebody who is going to say something special about you.
Also, make sure you tell your references. I've been called before by some people saying, so-and-so is put you down as a reference. Oh, I didn't know that. What is the job? So, yeah, if you want a good reference, make sure you talk to your references about it.
When I agree to be a reference for somebody, I ask for a copy of their most recent vita, and I say, send me any job ads that you think people are likely to call me, so I can be a better reference.
Mm-hmm. Job ads. I want to make sure you understand there's a difference between the job ad that is put in the newspaper or any other paid publication and the job description that is placed on the institutional website. So, for example, the instructional technologist, when we took an abbreviated version and the News and Record came back with a $600 advertising price for one day, we cut that down significantly again to get it under $300. So what you're looking at in the newspaper is not always the complete description. So if you're taking the job description and putting it in your cover letter, make sure you're starting with the complete institutional description that they've now posted on their website, because we really do cut it down to keep the cost down. I want to say something about gearing your appearance at the interview to the job that you are applying for. Prior to coming to Elon, I was at Fordham University, which is in Lincoln Center at Manhattan and is a Tier 1 law school. I had someone show up having already 3 years experience as a legal reference librarian at Rutgers, which is the State University of New Jersey, in flip-flops and a gapping shirt and black pants. Meanwhile, we're wandering around in business suits and heels. Now, heels are optional in my opinion. But you, maybe showing up in a $400 business suit for an interview would be inappropriate at a public library. It is not inappropriate in a special library, and it is not inappropriate in some academic libraries. So you need to make sure you are dressed, and that person, even though this was an entry-level job and had more experience than anybody else, was eliminated on the first go-round of, now let's talk about the people we went in, and the first thing everybody said is, we can't hire Jane. The dean would have a fit. It will not make it past the dean. And in fact, we pulled her from the personal interview with the dean of the law school because she would have embarrassed us. So really showing up is appropriate, dressed appropriately. And now with the experience I had here, when I'm on my hands and knees in my office pinning an interview candidate into her suit because she'd never worn it before, with the foundation garment she decided to put on, and it was falling off. She also did not make it to, we pulled her also from the dean's private interview. We actually changed her interview day-long schedule, and we had flown her in from the state of Washington. So the point is, even with that investment, we will pull people if they are not dressed appropriately.
I totally agree with Kate. And this gentleman certainly didn't have on flip-flops. I'm saying he didn't have a suit and a tie. And in rural libraries, I mean, you know, it depends on the position, as she says, that you're applying for, and you certainly need to be dressed appropriately. But I got to tell you, that guy does not need to have a tie on to go to the county commissioners or anywhere he wants to go. And there's an exception, whether we want to say it or not. There's almost an exception to every rule we want to make, except Kate's right, to the setting you're applying for. Think about what she said.
No, that's right. And culturally, too, where you are, like in Colorado, my boss would pull out her gold Birkenstocks to be dressed up. And if you want heels, they would be like, what's wrong with you? So culture, not just the place, but like you said, Manhattan versus rural Colorado, if you walked in a suit in some of those small places, they'd think, they wouldn't know how to approach you because you were too dressed up. So, yeah, you have to just kind of know the culture of the place, too.
So, Nora, go ahead, finish this thought.
Oh, I know. I was just thinking that the most important thing you want to indicate to employers is that you respect their time and their culture, whatever that culture is. You respect them. You're going to be dressed the way they expect you to be dressed. And I know that sounds like you're catering to them. Yes, you are. Do it.
And I want to mention one thing because it came up previously when I was chatting with some people before we started. For an academic library setting, it is absolutely not needed to keep your resume, and we would call it in an academic setting a vita or a curriculum vita, to one page. That's not expected. In some other settings it might be, and you do tailor to the setting. But I was telling somebody the longest vita I ever saw was a 40-page vita from a dean. Yours won't be that long, but 2-3 pages. If you've done enough to make it look substantial and done enough things that are important, yes, that's perfectly fine.
Well, excellent comments as always. And let me just finish the thought that there are also a lot of informal references that you guys need to be aware of. As you've heard me say before, we're one big community. So a lot of times we receive emails asking about you guys, and we're not part of your reference list. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The relationships are important. There are a lot of informal references that are going on that never become formal. Okay, so your reputation will precede yourself. Okay, so obviously work hard, and we're work well with people because obviously there's a lot of conversations that occur. Very good.
Yeah, I was going to ask a quick question before you move on, because you spoke to how long the resume or the vita might need to be. What do you all think about the length of cover letters? I mean, I know it's going to, it may vary.
No more than 2 pages.
No more than 2 pages.
No more than two. One.
It's entry level, it should be one.
Yeah. That's what I figured.
All right, great. So on to the next question. So what are the traits of your most successful employees? So everybody wants to be successful here. What are you look at your best employees, what are the traits that make them so?
Self-starters, people, I'm not much of a micromanager. When I have to micromanage somebody, it just makes me, I like people who come to me with ideas and say, hey, do you think this is a good idea? And then they go ahead and initiate it.
Having been trained and educated in a much more formal situation, hierarchies are important. I have had employees who have skipped me and wandered into the dean's office. Now, A, I'm unhappy. B, I've got the dean talking to me about a clerk being unhappy in the library. And the dean is unhappy that his time has been done. So that is not a successful type of a situation. And essentially, my situation at Elon was we had a clerk who wanted to go down to 19 hours a week and keep her benefits so that she could go out and start to train to become a nurse. Good goal. I understand all of this, but A, the university doesn't give benefits with less than 25 hours a week. And B, I needed somebody in the building 40 hours a week. And she skipped all of the fact that we had talked about arranging her schedule to fit around the classes and just went to the dean and how could we do this, and we know your wife's a doctor and, you know, the whole bit, and I want to be a nurse, I don't want to be this for the rest of my life. If you skip the hierarchy, it really is often annoying. The one thing I used to always say when at the institutions I worked in New York is keep it inside the library. If I was unhappy with something an immediate supervisor was doing, don't take it outside of the library to the rest of the institution. Stay within the library structure. When you move out, you create a lot of unhappiness.
To add to that, we had an employee in one of our 5 counties, one of our 15 libraries, who pranced out of the building and went to the county office with an issue he should have gone to in the building.
Right.
And I am flexible up to a point, but I do not, I go to my policy-making library board about big issues. I do not go to the county commissioners or any of those funding people. I do not like somebody who goes around the chain of command because problems need to be solved in order. And you need to remember that because probably your issues that you need resolved can be resolved along the way. And you hurt yourself, your supervisor, and on down the line if you don't follow whatever the guidelines are in the institution you're with. I don't like it.
And we're the people who write your annual reviews and decide on your pay raise.
I can say something to this. You've got to love people's information needs. You're not there to dispense materials. You're there to serve people's needs. So you've got to cultivate a love for that. And it's messy. People don't know what they want. They think they know what they want. And you've got to ask them and try to drive into understanding what they need with some polite kindness, sincereness. And sometimes, people are very frustrated when they come to you. Sometimes people don't want to engage with you until they get to a point of desperation. And that creates some anxiety in people. From kids all the way to grandmas and grandpas. You've got to cultivate a love and keep in your mind that they are there because they need something, and you are there to help them fulfill that need. So it's a human endeavor. And the people that have been the most successful were the people that engaged with others and loved doing it. They loved serving other people. The people that are the worst are the people that don't like doing that. They went into library science because they wanted to, I guess, crawl in a hole somewhere. And they're tired of being interrupted because some other person needs something right now. And it will happen at inopportune times. When you've got the most work you've had to face, you'll get a question. You've got to cherish that, and you've got to be willing to drop what you're doing at a moment's notice to serve somebody else, because every single time that comes back to you. And if you do that with your employees, you will find that more and more work gets done. If you get in a position of supervising people, they will go off the end of the cliff to help you. And sometimes they bother you to do things, and you're like, okay, everything's fine, just leave it alone. But you've got to cultivate that. And if you don't have that skill, and that's not a skill that's just taught. You can't take a class on that. We wish we could. But you've got to cultivate that love of others.
You absolutely do. And that's from, I have a lot of people who work for us at St. Hill Region who've been with me for a long time, because they know that good work is rewarded, and you get to move up. And when things are open and available, and we also have spent tuition money at this university because we believed in a paraprofessional who wanted to move forward when we had those funds available. And I've often told staff we have 15 to 20 training sessions a year for our paraprofessional staff and our professional staff. If you don't love what you're doing, you better get out of here right now, because you've got to come to work every day, and you only get paid once a month. If that's your only happy day of the month, you're at the wrong place, because you've got to get along with that crazy person that is very protective about the checkout desk, and very protective about this, that, or the other. You got to figure out how to get along with him or her and change their attitude about something. As he said, you got to love what you're doing. I started out at my first job here. I neglected to tell you how I started out, and I'm going to tell you a little bit. I went from working for the chair of this department for 2 years. And the interesting thing is, he was a researcher, and I am the furthest, in computers. And I am not computer illiterate, but I don't love them. I use them because I have to, and I'm supposed to. I went from there. Our family was transferred to South Georgia. I went from dealing with Utah people down to a 550 K through 2 school. Now that's culture shock. And the only thing about reading and telling stories and so on I knew was to my very own daughter, one person. And now 30 munchkins were coming in there all the time, wiggling, standing. So, this was instant more graduate school on a level that I cannot tell you how painful it was. So one day, I was so nervous when they were getting up running around, because I was used to people listening to what I had to say. And these little people were just going everywhere. So I ran over to the corner and got a broom and started telling Cinderella, making up new things about Cinderella. And they all sat down. And I decided then, you've got to market what you're doing. You have, and a colleague later said, oh, well, if you're in school library, you don't have to do that. And I said, are you kidding? If you don't market to the principal and to the funders there, the university level, law school, wherever, you've got to figure out how to tell these people who are giving you money to do more stuff that what you're doing is important. You got to market it. So that broom and Cinderella, and then as soon as I got settled and my nerves settled down, a year and a half later, we were transferred to yet another larger city. And there was not a public library job open. And I'm in an inner city school that's scary. Scary. There were K through 6 people who were taller than me. And they ran the program. When they came in, the children were sort of wild. And one guy evidently sort of liked me in the 6th grade. And he stood up and he said, "Miss Walters is going to read to us now." And everybody sat down. So the point is, finally, we were transferred to Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you, Lord Jesus. And I got to this. I told my husband, I'm not going to work until I get a public library job. And I don't want to be at the other 23 branches or the main library. I want to work. That's why gear your resume to the place you want to go. I want to work at the Germantown Library. I've researched, and it's one of the busiest libraries in the country. And I want to work there. And we're going to look for a house there. So we got an apartment, and I scouted the house. Then I went to the library every day. And there was a crazy library director there, wonderful lady, and I looked around, and I noticed one day the children's librarian was gone. And I walked up to her and I said, "Are you looking for a children's librarian?" See, I'd never wanted to do that before, but I got this extra education in South Georgia. So she said yes. And so I sent my resume downtown. And they didn't even talk to me. They didn't even talk to me. And I was so depressed. My husband sent me to Chicago to ALA, and I ran into Dr. Hines, who was chairman of the department here, relationships. "Hello, lovely lady, how are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm not too good. They won't hire me because our program's not accredited." He said, "Oh, where are you?" And I said, "Memphis." He said, "I did consulting work for Lamar Wallace. You go and tell him to give you a job. And if he needs to talk to anybody, to call me." And I thought, well, I have nothing to lose. And guess what? I just went downtown and asked to see him. And he was director, 23 branches, in a main library, a block big. And I said, "Dr. Hines told me to come and that you would give me a job, and I want to work in Germantown." And he said, "I've been trying to call him for weeks, and he won't answer the phone." And I said, "I'll call him." And I called him while I was in Mr. Wallace's office, and he answered the phone. They talked, and Mr. Wallace wrote something on a piece of paper, and the same HR lady who wouldn't even call me, much less write a note, hired me that day, and I went to work. So, I'm telling you this because everything doesn't happen right in order like you hope it will. And sometimes you have to spend time in the hinterlands before they take musicals to Connecticut before they go to New York. So you may have to go to Connecticut before you get in the chair you want. But it is a wonderful field. And you have to be flexible and enjoy what you're doing. Find a place you enjoy what you're doing and do a lot of it. When I got back to North Carolina, my husband said, "We're going to be transferred to Oklahoma." And I said, "I've loved you for years, but I ain't going to Oklahoma." I've already moved 6 times. And I'm going home, and I hope that you can figure out a way to be transferred back so we can see each other. And he did. He's a wonderful gentleman. And we came home, and I got a job as a library director, and I'd never been one. And have loved it for 30 years. I did a lot of what I knew how to do because I've learned to tell stories and get on the front of the paper for doing good deeds. And while they weren't watching at night, I was learning how to do budgets and crunching numbers and learning how to write reports. And you have to do what you have to do. You have to do a lot up front of what you know how to do, whether it's cataloging, programming, whatever. You have to do a lot and get known for your good deeds. And it works.
Carol, let me say something to that, too. Don't rely solely on your resume. in your cover letter, I mean, get to know people. You need to go and see people, and you need to be a part of it. And I mean, that's networking. But look how many doors were open because, I mean, she went to a conference. If you're not at ALA or school library conferences or other of these special collection conferences, I mean, that's how you get to know people. And they will remember you. I had a gentleman, I'll tell you this too, I had a gentleman, we had a stack of, we were doing IT people and media specialists and several groups all at one time, had 100 resumes. Half the pile got put into another location in the HR department. And a gentleman called me. Had he not called me, I would have never even seen the resume. I mean, the frontline people, there are frontline people that think they can make a decision on you, and it never even gets to the right person. You got to get it to the right person. And getting it to the right person is okay. Walk in and hand them something. You're going to put something online 1,000 times. Don't wait for a door to open. You've got to go and open the door.
But don't stalk. Don't stalk. I had one woman recently who called 7 times, emailed 15 times, and showed up at the school 3 times, and we wouldn't let her pass security. She really wanted that entry-level reference job, but, you know, she became really scary.
Well, I had these real good discussion, and let me just finish the thought of building off of the last 2 comments, in particular outside the stalking. That obviously your first job is not going to be your last, so keep this in mind too. As we talk about passion and doing a great job, your work will speak for itself, right? And so I'm sure everyone at this table has had this experience. You do good work, and people will start calling you. Okay, and so I think in the end, it's all about doing good work, being passionate, helping other people, and that creates a positive ebb and flow that really will work well for you. So this is not your first job. So whatever job you get, it's not your first job. It is the beginning of your career. Do a great job, and then you're going to start to build some momentum, right? All right, so the next one, every professional panel has to have this discussion. What advice would you give to them in preparing for their future? So outside of coming to events like this, what are some pearls of wisdom you could give to them?
I wanted to say what these guys at the end people were just saying about building the relationships and volunteering and getting those experiences. I mean, just that's advice right there. For me, I've gotten jobs by volunteering. My job working as a consultant in Colorado, I was volunteering teaching like internet stuff. This was like 10 years ago or so in rural communities. And there was a couple librarians that were in one of my classes and said, "You're a really good trainer." I was working at the University of Colorado Boulder and then as a map librarian. They're like, "You're great at training. You're good with people and you explain this stuff really well. Do you want to be a consultant? We have a position open. Let me go introduce you to the boss." And within a week, they were like flying me down and offering me this job. And I'm like, I had a job that was fine. But I'm like, well, let's go with this opportunity. Sometimes a door opens and it's a great opportunity. I mean, the experiences I've had, I can apply those experiences to other things. So anyway, so volunteering or getting yourself out there into those opportunities and taking a job that might not be in this market. It's hard to find something. It might not be what you think you wanted. I thought when I got out, I'm going to do this. And then I've done a lot of different things. So, but learning from each one of them, anything I do, I throw myself into. I try to take any experiences I can, any extra opportunities, and building the networks, like you were saying, building networks with people is so key. Like there's people that I know from all over that I have connections with, so don't burn bridges and stay, even if you're unhappy where you are currently, if you're in a position, be careful not to burn any bridges because those people might be really important for you one day, or might be someone that knows somebody else. It's such a small world, even though it's a big world. And so, yeah, that's really important.
Get out and do things beyond library school. If there's a conference or a workshop, get out and go to it. I've had students tell me, I can't go to that because I've got to finish a paper or do this or do that. The paper ultimately is not going to get you a job. Getting out and meeting people, going to the North Carolina Association Library Conference, talking to people, asking people questions, that's going to make those kind of contacts that might eventually lead to a job.
And like little things too. Like I'm talking to people that are trying to find stuff to put on the resume or Vita. Like there's a lot of opportunities. Like I do online webinars and I offer to students, like if you want to teach an online webinar with me or with another librarian, let me know. Maybe you have a skill or a tool you want to learn, and And here, then you have this opportunity, you do it, and you can put it on your resume. So sometimes it's stepping out and saying, doing a little extra, a blog post for something that's local, or get with the student association and see if you could do a little presentation through them. Or there's a lot of opportunities that, as you're thinking about graduating, that try to jump on those now, and whether they're in or outside of libraries, you can always take things even if they're not in a library, but they have skills that can relate that you can use to show that you have experience. I mean, that's really key.
One of the things that's happening right now, I've sent notes to a few students, and there's been things on the student listserv about ALA and the different divisions of ALA sponsor scholarships to ALA, and one of them was by the Freedom to Read Foundation, and this was, all expenses paid. You have to write an essay, and, just like Mary said, some of you are going to say, well, I have this paper due. Well, this might be a more important paper for you to write than anything you're going to write for me. Now, are you, is that going to affect your GPA? Maybe, but let me give you another little secret, okay? Nobody ever looked at my GPA when they were deciding to hire me for a job, okay? That is the fifth thing that we look at. We want to make sure that you graduated from an ALA-accredited university. If they had seen my cataloging grade, they would have not let me touch OCLC, okay? So, again, you're making trade-offs all the time. Let go of that perfectionist, 4.0, and move on to the really important work that you're doing, the volunteer work, the connections, etc.
I'm a member of the North Carolina chapter of Special Libraries Association for reasons that I won't go into. But we had a $1,000 award paper that I volunteered to be one of the readers. Now, that's a nice thing to say. I won an award for the best paper, blah, 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 and I got $1,000. We had two people who, this year, normally they have more, but we had two people who bothered to send us a paper for that, and it kind of blew my mind. It was like, wow, why would somebody do that? That's a lot of money. And the prestige and the fact that as an academic librarian, people have to usually get tenure, and I want to know they have the ability to write successfully and to do that kind of thing.
It's just the initiative.
The initiative to do that, and it really did surprise me that happened.
And by the way, that's actually a common theme for grants as well. A lot of grants, especially a lot of specialized grants, there are not enough applicants. So just keep that in mind too. If you have the initiative, you can really make a lot of amazing things happen fast.
If any of you are interested in law librarianship, there is a student paper competition for AALL, which includes a small monetary grant, but a free trip to AALL, including registration, hotel, and everything else. This year it's in Boston, if you want to go visit Boston for a little while.
Great town.
And Connecticut really is not that bad, having been born, raised, and had my first job there.
I agree. Yeah, I just forwarded something to the student listserv that I learned about through SLA that would give you the scholarship to go to the annual conference for science, the Science and Technology Division.
And I know that the regionals often also have scholarships available for students. So has anybody applied to go to SEAL? Southeastern Association of American Association of Law Libraries? It's in Clearwater, Florida this year. But again, it's a paper and a grant if you are a student. So these are all opportunities that are out there. And if you go to SEAL, you're going to meet everybody from the Southeast. Because that is one, I can't get all my librarians to go to AALL, but they'll all go to SEAL. I don't understand it. We'll leave that aside.
Our apologies. We have 2 minutes left of this session.
But
So closing thoughts as
We have left out one little thing that I would like to emphasize. Regardless of what courses you're taking, you need to think about and network with a professor at this university and wherever you can about marketing. And we need to do that. Regardless of what kind of library you go to, you have to learn to market yourself and the things around you. That is so critical. And you have to learn an example. I served on a committee at ALA, off and on for 25 years at Lama PRS committee, swapping shop. And we collected marketing things from all over the country. And they had, for years, had a survey sheet that was 8.5 by 11. And I said, well, I wouldn't want to stop and fill out that thing. You got to simplify the thing. All we did, ask the same question in this size paper instead of that size paper, and instead of 500 survey sheets, we got 1,500. So my point is, you have to learn. You have to look and learn about the format of things and ask about, if you're not taking, there's a piece of each course or a number of courses with marketing in it, and you need to be familiar with that because you're going to have to sell ideas along the way regardless of what hat you put on.
Okay. Any concluding thoughts before we move on to the next step? All right, well, let's give our panel Thank you very much for that. All right, so here's the format for the rest of the day. And in just a second, I'm going to ask you guys to step out so the panel can go ahead and sit at their round tables. And then we're also going to have 3 speed dating situations. So basically, what I want you to do when you come back in is go ahead and talk to them individually more about their areas, and I will be grabbing some of you to go meet with the speed dating group as well. At noon, we're actually going to have relatively the same format, but this time with more of your peers, recent alums, as well as some current students that are going through the process right now. And they can kind of share with you some of the tools and tricks of the trade that they've learned as well. And then we also have, speaking of Mary's point, we have apparently a very successful individual that has applied to a lot of different grants and competitions and have won them all. And he's actually in Amman, Jordan. And he not only give you an international perspective, but give you his personal perspective on you should apply for these things. And guess what? You might get it, and you might keep getting it. Apparently, this individual is good with that. So, with that being said, take a break. Go out there. We'll get situated here. Of course, panel, feel free to take a break as well. And then the career daters, if you can stay.